Welcome, everybody. I'm David Adler, Chairman and founder of BizBash. Thank you for joining us in today's conversation with a few of the most influential people in our industry, part of our BizBash 500 list. I'm also joined today by our editor-in-chief, Ashton Pike. Hi, Ashton. How are you today?
Hi, David. I'm wonderful. How are things up in DC?
DC's great. Everything's good. We're just excited to have all these great power thinkers to help stimulate our creativity today. These are going to be people that are forces behind Instagram, Vice Media, Spotify, and Walmart, all the brands that we know about every day and we look up to. And we're going to hear what they think about how our events industry is changing and how to bring creativity every day and how to get our brain stimulated a little bit. So, but before we start, I want to start with some housekeeping notes. Be sure to share your feedback on our webinar and tag BizBash and SpotMe. We will be hosting a Q&A at the end of the webinar, so please submit your questions via the chat box on the right, which I'm pointing to. And you be sure to explore the SpotMe platform. These are activity, challenges, and resources and matchmaking platforms that'll be right at your fingertips. So, at the conclusion of the webinar, we'll be sending out a copy of the recording so that you don't have to take notes and that you can just do this and listen and pay attention. So with that said, Ashton, why don't you tell us who we have today?
Absolutely. So I'd like to introduce you guys to our powerhouse panelists. First up, we have Damien Baines of Instagram. Damien is the experiential marketing lead for Instagram and executes its global events and activations at major businesses, marketing moments like the Cannes Lion Festival of Creativity, CES, and Adweek. He's also collaborated with a number of world-renowned artists, designers, and creatives to produce innovative, award-winning programs. So welcome, Damien.
Thank you.
Next up, we have Catherine Tully of Vice Media Group. Catherine is the Senior Vice President of Experiential for Vice Media Group, and she joined Vice in 2019 as the Senior Vice President of Experiential for Refinery29 and expanded to oversee all of Vice Media Group's experiential marketing and live event offerings in January of 2020. Before Vice Media, Catherine spent 15 years at Superfly, where she led the logistical and technical development for Bonnaroo, Outside Lands, and Clusterfest, as well as activations and events for Verizon, Apple, Viacom, and many other notable names. Welcome, Catherine. Next up, we have Kiana Cashfield of Spotify. Kiana is the Global Director of Experiential and Content Production for Spotify. Having joined the organization in 2017, she now leads the production of Spotify's largest brand executions around the world. Prior to joining Spotify, she led production and video content teams for major media organizations, including NBC, Vivo, Discovery Communications, and CNN. Hi, Kiana. And last but not least, Mark Hinneberger of Walmart. Mark is the Vice President of Events at Walmart, where he produces over 250 corporate meetings and events annually. From annual shareholders meetings, week activities, to Walmart television studios, he has spearheaded live experiences for the brand since 2006 and currently leads a team of 40. Prior to his role at Walmart, Hinneberger worked at live event films, exhibits, and videos around the world. So welcome all of our panelists. We're so excited to have you.
That's great. Thank you so much, Ashton. We're going to be doing the questioning so we can stimulate the conversation. We want people to think like they're in their living room. And if you have questions, let us know. Panelists, just jump in on each other as well. This is just family. First question is, this has been one hell of a year, right? I would say everybody would agree with that, number one. How have you guys been doing? What has changed the way you look at the world in the last few months? Because this is a very trying time, but it's also been one of the most innovative times. Who wants to start? Mark, how has your world changed?
Thanks, David. I appreciate having me be the first one. I mean, obviously the world's been turned upside down, and the event business, has probably been hit out of any of the industries affected, probably affected the most. Such a freelance-based environment, and these people, people aren't working and haven't worked since the second week in March. And it's a tough time. I'm fortunate to work for a company that keeps me employed, but I feel super bad for the folks that don't have that same opportunity.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'd probably echo that statement.
Right.
I can go. Yeah, I'm lucky that I work for a digital media company, and that media is still, in some cases thriving during this time. I think that we were well suited to pivot, but we did have a very large experiential team to do physical events and activations. Some of those people haven't worked since March, so it has been really tough. Doing digital events or virtual events is really only 10 to 20% of the workforce and the budget that you were working with previously. So while we were very well suited to pivot, and we have a built-in community and amazing partnerships with platforms such as Instagram and Facebook and YouTube to be able to serve as our venues for our live and virtual events, it's definitely been a shift in our workforce.
Yeah, I can go next.
Yeah.
I think this year it's been tough. It's been tough. I think the reason I and a lot of my direct reports are in production is because we love production. We love to build the thing and bring people together and experience it, and you're able to touch it and feel it and smell it and stand in it. And then, you're always on the road, you're traveling. So take that away and try to and see what happens to producers, like that execution, that moment, all of the hustle that leads up to that actual thing that you can see and stand in really is gratifying for I think all of us on this call. And that's why we kind of do what we do, and we do the late night calls and we do the overnight flights, and because we have that thing. But this year we've kind of still had the work and a lot of re-education, but we haven't had that moment, which I think is just really, really hard. But it's also been a really interesting year to kind of really teach new skill sets to my experiential team. They've all pretty much become experts in video production now too. And it was an interesting way to teach them something I've done in the past, but I've never done it this way. I've never not been on set when the cameras are rolling. So trying to teach, but also you're learning yourself a new way of doing things you would have traditionally done in a very tried and tested format. So it's been hard. And then of course, checking on
it's very democratic.
Yeah, and it's checking in on your vendors. We've all been doing this a really long time. We have relationships with our vendors. We know them as people as well. And I'm again fortunate, like all of you all, to be at Spotify and being really empowered to try different ways and kind of really still be creative and put things out there in the world. But some of our vendors haven't been that lucky, and it's hard to see that happen.
How about Damien? What's going on? I mean, Instagram is the heart of creativity in our world in many ways, but how has the world changed for you in terms of face-to-face experiential?
Yes. Well, this year, as Facebook Inc., our first response to everything that's been happening is to be empathetic. So a lot of our work as a broader company was focused on supporting small business. We gave away $100 million in ad credits, as well as grants. We've also supported Black businesses, giving away $100 million there in grants and ad credits, and Black creators, so $75 million there. When you speak about creativity, it's been a very introspective time. We really have been taking a step back and really trying to understand this brave new digital world we've all been thrust into, and becoming very aware that not everything translates. So I'm using this term transcreate, where we are really tearing things down and trying to understand how this new digital context works and build within that.
Do you want to give us any of what you found out about trans creativity, and what should a listener today take out of that word? What does that word mean exactly?
Yeah, so it really comes from experience with different campaigns being a global company. There is maybe an impulse to try to create a campaign that works for the entire world. And a lot of times what you find is that things don't translate culturally from one to the next. And you really have to perhaps not just use different language, but use a whole other concept because of that lack of translation. And I really find in the digital world, much of what was being done physically just doesn't apply. It's just a whole different realm, a whole different form. Yet you're still trying to be as immersive and experiential as possible. So that's the real challenge.
So
Yeah, I mean,
we've all talked about. Go ahead, Catherine.
Oh, I was just going to add on to that. I think, some of the things, I totally agree, Damien, like some of the things that worked for us in the physical event and experiential world, like don't translate as well through our digital or virtual events. So like, one of the things I always note is like, if we would align with a celebrity or someone who, had some of that like organic, press behind them, be able to promote an event. Sometimes that doesn't translate as well in the digital world. Sometimes it's better to align with smaller influencers or almost like, what we would call like micro groups that have really expansive communities. So for us, it's like really been like pulling back a little bit and looking at the way that we present things and focusing on reach and like tapping into people's pre-existing communities and like less on, big buzzy press moments and that type of impressions, really like tapping into pre-existing communities. Cause that's where people are going right now, to have discussions and to go to events and really collaborate.
Absolutely. People want to feel connected.
Kiana, are you seeing the same thing? And Mark, are you guys seeing the same thing? Kiana?
100%.
Are you saying more niche? Yeah. More niche?
Yeah. And I think just trying to be authentic
this concept
is really important. Like just trying to make sure that the things you're putting out there feel authentic to your audience that you're trying to speak to, or the artist or performance or celebrity you're trying to feature. It doesn't just kind of hoping to build an environment that would have worked when you had a live audience and shoot a camera towards it and thinking that's going to work and that's going to really have the same energy or the gravitas is a false hope. Like you really do need to kind of rethink the strategy and the approach, and intimacy and kind of like authenticity is kind of the starting factors that you need to really think about.
What are the keys to intimacy on digital though? What makes it so that is it less produced? Is it more like what we're doing now, that we're just sort of like, we're not perfect? What are some of the attributes of an intimate experience digitally? Mark, anybody want to start?
Yeah, we've done some pretty large big audience virtual events, and we found that a mix of pre-recorded and live works really well. And I don't know that the live is more authentic, but it makes the presenter feel that it's more authentic, which, that's part, I mean, we have an audience we're trying to reach, but we also have executives that we're trying to put in the best light possible. So I think it's a balance. And the interesting thing, Kiana mentioned that magic moment that happens at a live event. I haven't experienced a magic moment at a virtual event yet. You don't get that sense of, wow, this thing worked really well. The lights go down, it's over, and we're on to the next thing. And it's just that great feeling as an event person that you accomplished something. You worked 3 months, did this thing, and now you're moving on. And with virtual, it tends to carry on a little bit longer.
Totally. Yeah.
Wow. Catherine, you're about to say something. You're jumping out of your chair.
Oh, no, I was just going to say for us, it's like, yeah, we look. Yeah. I was just going to say for us, we see our live events digitally almost as a slow burn. You may only have, a couple hundred to maybe even 1,000 concurrent watchers, but then, you turn that into a VOD asset and you put in tools for, interaction, whether it's polling or, calls to action or UGC, and you try to extend the campaign. And that's where you're really seeing that, like that reach and that expanse, that really advertisers and partners are looking for in order to replace that foot traffic that they used to have. So yeah, it's like, it's a slow burn. Like it could be, we did a live event last night and I was being asked this morning already, like, how did it do? And I'm like, give it a couple of days, because, we did turn it into a VOD asset, and there's still engagements that are happening online through comments, likes, shares. And it just takes a little longer to register that impact.
So as a big company, you've got to justify everything that you do. But the measurements are crazy. We don't know how to measure it. So when you said, give it a couple days, what is success? And this is a question for everybody. What is success now in the digital realm? And then I want to go back to what will it be now in the new event world? But let's start with Catherine again, since you started talking about that.
I mean, I think a lot of the success in these live events that are happening are kind of do borrow from a lot of those KPIs and metrics that we saw through, content creation and digital media. One thing, we always try to, avoid is, and I'm sure that everyone else does this in terms of, their regular physical events, is like, I can't promise how many people will attend an event. I can put a plan together to market it, and I'll know relatively, based off of how much I'm marketing it or spending it against it, how many people I'm going to get to attend. So yeah, there's a big unknown, I think, with like digital and virtual events, because you do have so many other tools that can measure success, whether it's through engagement, shares, organic impressions. You can visualize it a little bit better through all like the back end data, and actually so you can really have a better return on, or show a better return on investment for brands and advertisers through like digital and virtual events. Whereas physical events, while we've come a long way with measuring success and those KPIs, it's still very difficult to measure everything on site, and there's just so many variables to the physical interaction. So I actually think, it's gotten to be almost a little bit easier to measure virtual and digital event success.
Is that true? Damien, you're the one that we want people to get on Instagram as a measurement of our success. You're like the holy grail for success. What do you guys do? How do you judge your success? I mean, you can't just be posting on Instagram for your own events, right? Or can you?
We don't know. Typically in physical events, in physical events, we utilize a sentiment survey to really understand from our attendees what their perspective is on the event, what are the parts that work for them, what didn't, so we can really take that insight and develop and change and evolve as we move forward with events. I think interactivity, I would say right now in digital, is probably the most important thing to measure success. So that would be anything from polls to chat to reactions, and a lot of it is that's dependent on the platform that you're using.
Are you guys enhancing your platform to allow for more integration and more interactivity between people? Have you guys learned something from your own events and how other people are using it?
I would say we are definitely in deep exploration and conversation around exactly how we can take what's working right now on our platforms and perhaps amplify that. And I won't say anything else about that.
So we got some new things coming. Kiana, what is success for you guys in the digital world today?
I mean, I think it's similar to what Catherine said. It's hard. It depends. I really think it depends on the audience and the goal of the event, right? So given that they're digital now, they come of all sizes and shapes. It could be a really intimate, executive level conversation where you want to be a thought leader in the space. And if that brings something and educates your partners in some sort of way, that leads to a partnership down the line, that is success, but that is not hundreds of people watching something. If it's, doing something that is allowing an artist to connect to their fans and that is really authentic to their X amount of super fans, that is successful for that goal. So I really think depending on the goal of each activation, the measurement of success is different. Of course, there's traditional things, right? Like if you're doing something that is a B2B initiative, there is ways you can measure attribution and pipeline and what that influenced. But I think a blanket kind of measurement like that would the one flexibility we have in this digital world is not, instead of doing 3 huge things, you can do several small things, a couple medium things, and a couple of huge things, and each of those have different goals. And depending on those goals, the outcomes will vary. And I think all of us know, like, yes, it's easier a little bit now to like have hard metrics. When we had physical events, there is a halo effect and this swagger that these things can maybe also kind of put out there into the community that it's really hard to measure, but it's really important, I think. And that's always been a struggle for me as an event professional. It's like, yes, you can measure press, you can measure attendance, attendance, you can measure KPI and pipeline and all of that, and social sharing and things like that. But you can't measure the feeling that you leave on attendees as a brand. There's just no real way to measure that.
Right, we have to package Maya Angelou. Mark, what? Tell us what you think success is, and also why do you actually have an event now? Like, what is the rationale, the reason to jump in and gather an audience? Is it just sales? Is it, why are people doing events?
So, I mean, our big events are more around strategy. At least we do a year beginning meeting at the beginning of the year, obviously, and that's where leadership sets out the strategy for the year to store managers or club managers, depending on who the audience is. So that gets everyone aligned. And as you can imagine, with the company the size of Walmart or even Sam's Club, which is funny, we look at Sam's as being tiny and they're 600 locations. But I just think that we have to give people that people want to know the why. They'll do it. I mean, they're gonna get paper towels and they're gonna get toys and things sent to them. But if we can give them the why as to why we're doing a particular thing, that makes people. I think it makes people more engaged. I think it gives those store managers, give that audience the chance to be on the inside, which I think is super important. And we've never been held to any kind of metrics. I'm very lucky that that's the case. But we do survey our attendees after the event to see if any of the content that we put out there is sticky. And to Catherine's point, the last two virtual events we've done, we have more data than we know what to do with. People visiting certain rooms, getting in the chats, seeing the general session more than one time. It's just all this stuff that we're still trying to sift through and figure out what does success look like, because we frankly don't know at this point. It's such a new environment for us, such a new frontier that we're struggling. I hope most other people are.
But are you seeing anything that's sort of like sort of when you just see the initial data, like, oh my God, I didn't know that. Are you seeing that kind of oh my type of results?
Yeah, I think we do. So I mentioned earlier in the interview that we were talking about setting up a super center on a conference floor, on a convention center floor. And we break it up into like 6 departments, for lack of a better way to describe it. And that's in the physical world, which David, you saw in Denver a couple of years ago. So we tried to mimic that same organization digitally. And so we could count every time a store manager went to the produce section or went to the entertainment section. And at a live event, you don't know. I think both Kiana and Catherine said, you don't really know how many people are engaged in what they're doing. You have a sense, but you don't know. But this gave us we knew that 2,000 store managers made a trip to the produce pad, is what we call them. So it's interesting to find out what works and what doesn't.
That's great. Ashton, do you want to jump in? And you're burning, I see some questions burning in your brain.
Yes, I do have some questions. Before I dive into my already planned questions, I did have one question that Mark just kind of sparked. You said you are digging into this data that you're getting from virtual events. And as I've been interviewing a lot of event professionals and meeting professionals over the past few months, a lot of them are saying that, while virtual is almost the bane of their existence at this point, they're also thankful for a lot of the intel that they've gotten about their audience and about their attendees that they feel like they can take to their live events. And I was wondering, like a high level corporate perspective, if y'all feel the same way, that once you return to live events, that you have gotten to know your attendee a little bit better in terms of like, on a virtual platform, you can tell where they go, what breakout session they attended, how many attended, whereas at a live event, you can't necessarily track their motion at every point. So I was wondering if that is going to be helpful to any of you guys from the corporate perspective.
I think for us, the most interesting thing that we're seeing out of our virtual events is, just really widening our net of people who attend it. And, I'm a big believer that, experiential, no matter what form it comes in, whether or not it's, virtual or physical, really lends itself to growing a loyal audience. And obviously we, through Vice Media Group and all of our different verticals, we have a very large audience, but if I can get some of that audience to interact with us and have some sort of connection with us, then that, makes them a more loyal audience. And I think for us, a lot of the joy that we're seeing in these virtual events is being able to widen that net and to really create events that are more inclusive, and that, if you're, in the middle of America and have never been able to travel to one of Vice or Refinery's events in New York City or LA or Atlanta or DC, you're able to attend an event with us now because we've eliminated the barriers of, time and travel and space, really. And that to us has been really appealing. And we want to continue to figure out how we can do that, because, I think everyone in, North America and also globally, if they want to attend an event hosted by Vice Media Group, they should be able to have the means and the extension to do that. We want to be speaking to everyone. So I think for us, it's really made us think how we can make our events more inclusive to everyone.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that is a very big point. As I've been interviewing a bunch of event pros, that they've been saying, while virtual events, we don't get that same experience. Kiana, like you were speaking to earlier, they also have a lot of benefits. And so I think, Catherine, you hit that nail on the head. So y'all were talking about success earlier and how y'all measure that success. And so this question is specifically for Damien and Catherine. I know that your two brands rely heavily on influencers. And so clearly the role of influencers has greatly changed during the pandemic. And so I was just curious as to how you two are activating these creators when you have no physical space or an event for them to go to.
So I'll take that one first. Outside of events, the number one way that Instagram and many other brands would leverage creators, I know everyone uses the term influencers, but we think about them as creators on our platform, would be through content. It would not necessarily be through an activation, just because of the scaling capabilities of content. When the pandemic first started, we saw a real dip in everything, and that included branded content, brands working with creators to create something special in that medium. But since the first few months of the pandemic, there's been a bounce back, definitely trending upwards relative to where we were this time year over year in terms of branded content. I think that the areas in which we're seeing branded content being used is shifting and changing. We're seeing an uptick in wellness, fitness, skincare, all of these types of things where people are paying more attention to in self-care, especially during this period.
Yeah,
are you saying that people
the
just
same,
want to relate, they want to relate to what what's going on, be relevant?
Absolutely. I mean, branded content and the use of creators / influencers, it's not going anywhere. As a matter of fact, one of the reasons why we think we're seeing an uptick on that is because it is actually easier potentially to work with a creator with user-generated content versus kind of these high production type of products that you would see before. So I only expect that category to grow as more people are tuned in digitally with their phones and everything. It only makes sense that we would see that. A point of delineation on where we're seeing the most growth, and it's in those areas.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, creators continue to be big for us too.
Are you seeing that, Damien, in your research? Is your research saying that rather than the big splashy heart productions, that the co-created content with your audiences are doing better? Is that justified, or is it just your gut?
No. I mean, this is what we've seen through metrics, right? We've
metrics.
Seen this.
Yeah.
Yes, we've seen this. This is definitive, and it has more to do. Well, if all things were equal and we were not in this lockdown environment, then you could say, well, maybe this is performing better than highly produced content. You can't really say that now just because highly produced content is becoming impossible to do. For sure in the first wave, now you're seeing lockdowns globally in Europe. We may have some here in the US. So it's really specific and dependent on the lockdown.
So Kiana, I had a question specifically for you. So virtual events and virtual event platforms lend themselves very easily and well, I would say, to the music industry and like music specific events, in terms of, we've seen, plenty of brands take to gamification platforms and everything like that to produce virtual concerts. And so overall, how has your event strategy changed this year, since these artists aren't currently having listening parties and concerts? Have y'all tried the virtual concert, like dived into there a little bit?
Yeah, I think for myself and my team in Spotify, we really want to make sure that we're setting up the artists for success and making sure they're comfortable in their environment, and we're putting a quality product out there. So as we all know, like super highly produced things right now can be difficult. There was a moment in the UK where things were a little bit more open, where you could get into a studio of some sort, but I think so we want to make sure we're putting out a quality product. So we have been bringing in different elements. So is that a conversation with an artist that is live, but hugged with a piece of canned content that might have been their performance that we can make sure was shot in the right way and that sounds good? Is it we have a franchise, for example, called Spotify Supper that we wanted to continue through this year virtually, where it's 8 years strong, and it brings together the intersection of food and music, the two things everyone loves across the globe and every culture. And we kind of explored, depending on the market we were activating in and what the rules and regulations were in that market, different ways of bringing that to life. So in the UK, we were able to kind of shoot Sunday morning show style, like a chef in the one location and the artist is another location, where we had Rachel Ama, who's a vegan chef, teach Maverick Sabre how to create a vegan meal. And then we had an exclusive acoustic performance from him for our audience. So we've been trying to do things like that, where we still have that music element, but also hug it with some other content where they can get to know the artist a little bit better and kind of take a peek into their lives or personalities. Because that's kind of what we think we can offer right now that is different than a very flashy and beautiful, highly produced concert, but still giving that kind of intimate and authentic feel, and as well have a music element in our executions.
Right. Very cool. Okay, so this is for everybody. This is more of a broad spectrum, but everyone who is listening, I'm sure, is dying to know, where do you all find your inspiration these days? Whether you're transforming to virtual or you're planning future in-person events, we want to know where you guys are pulling inspiration from. As creatives, it's really hard to stay inspired when you're kind of locked in your house sometimes. So, I'm sure any tips and tricks to our audience would be super helpful.
I'll go first. I mean, I think going back to what Damien said, I get a lot of inspiration from creators that we align with, especially our content creators, because I feel like, being at a very large company and aligning yourselves with, various collectives and content creators and really outside voices that are bringing in, perspectives and their POV, especially those that align with your POV, are really inspirational. And I think that there's just so many amazing content creators that really stepped it up during quarantine, because they've had a lot of time. So, I mean, I enjoy, getting on all the different platforms, whether it's, IG or what people are doing with Facebook Live and Facebook groups, which was released recently, or even TikTok and Snap, and seeing what everyone's doing on those. That's been really inspirational. I think also it's for Vice, we're always looking towards, our youth audience, and we're doing something called the 2030 Project, where we are receiving applications or actually received applications for different types of content creators to come and do externships with us for a full year. And so we've been going through all that, and all those all those people who applied are so incredibly, dialed into culture and creativity and social trends. And I'm really excited about the group of people that were chosen and seeing what they're going to come up with this year. So, we're always looking at them for, our audience and our fellow employees and our content creators we line with for inspiration.
So I would say that I'm getting my inspiration from our frontline associates. Those, the people that are working in the stores. If you've seen our advertising most of this year, it's really trying to humanize the Walmart brand. And I mean, our associates are doing crazy things. I mean, they're in there every day wearing a mask before masks were mandatory, and they're still doing their regular job and taking care of our customers. And to me, that is so inspirational. And the team's always trying to create stories about associates. Well, there's so many opportunities to do that now that I think we're going to be in really good shape once we get back to being able to recognize these people, hopefully on a stage. But if not, we're doing it every time we get groups together, store managers or whatever, to highlight associates and what they're doing. And plus, we're such a big company that we have tons of associates that do their own little rap videos. We've actually made some stars, internal stars, out of about 8 of our associates that have put together some really clever, creative content on their own.
That's great. Who else? Damien?
I'll go. So I think you can find inspiration anywhere. I think one of the things that just, of course, makes it different in this time is that your inspiration is online on platforms like Instagram and others. But it really is giving an opportunity to dig and be a bit more introspective, as I mentioned before. So as thinking about experiential and the roots of it, where did this start? Where is it going? There's been a great opportunity to really dive into that. I'll go into a bit of that thinking. So I really would put kind of like in terms of experiential, there's the smartphone or mobile phone, and it's before and after, right? So prior to smartphone, mobile phone, you have things like Yayo and Kusama's infinity rooms, which people, line up around the block to see now, but that actually started in 1965. You even have like Liz Taylor and her husband at the time investing in this film called Sin of Mystery in 1960, where they wanted to do smell-o-vision, where they actually were going to pipe in like 30 different smells into theater. All those things, you can't scale those, right? And there was a different focus there. It was truly on experience. And then you have the smartphone. Smartphone comes around, and everyone actually can capture these fantastic images, these fantastic pictures. And as you look at the advent of Instagram and the development of the smartphone and all these different things that come, I'm really finding that art and technology and democratization really are those things that we have to lean into, and directionally, that's where you will find where the trend, is going. So that's a bit of this deep thinking that we're trying to do about where we are in experiential. Where is it going? Because everybody wants to know and understand where it's going. Technology and mass adaptation of that technology, and it really speaks to how things become democratized and used. And so I would say, look for those things.
Great. Kiana, last but not least.
Oh, that was such a great answer. I don't feel like I don't need to add too much more. But no, I think a lot right now we're taking inspiration of things that, like, when we are thinking through what we're doing today, just given how the team is creative, like, if we're going to do this in person, we do X and Y. So we keep a running list of the things we want to consider to do and bring back or really beef up when we go back to physical at some point. So kind of really, and then also just collaborating with creatives and creators that we want to work with. They've had a lot of time to think and reflect on things that they want to do and put out there into the world. So really listening and trying to kind of finding ways to bring those elements to life for them to speak to their audience in a way that is possible now, and then potentially put it in the hopper for the future.
I have a question that relates a little bit to this. Can one of you at least take us into your brainstorming meeting? And how does actually these ideas get put into action? Like, how are we doing this today? Everyone's virtual. Who has sort of an example of a great brainstorming technique that they use to actually get to a program? Anybody who wants to start? Kiana, you look like you have an answer there ready to come out.
Do I? Okay, I'll give you one. I don't know if I had one, but I'll give you one. I think we've also, my team and I have been doing a lot of consuming. We're not on planes as much anymore, so we have a little more time on our hands to really consume what other brands and other people are putting out there, and really seeing what's possible, how other people approached it, what that sparks for us, what ideas that sparks, what really worked, what kind of didn't work. So we kind of like do a lot of, we kind of separately or together do a lot of consuming, and then like maybe start evaluate it as a group, and then that organically leads into like, okay, we have to approach our thing this way. And so taking learnings from what we just talked about or what we've been seeing recently, what do we want to improve on or beat, or what is a good benchmark that we should keep in mind, and how we want to take it to the next level. So I think spending the time that we would have traveling or doing a late night load in to becoming like more avid consumers of things, because we can go to all these events physically, but now that they're virtual, we can see a little bit more and get a peek inside of what other people are doing, to keep that in mind as we are kind of coming up with our own ideas and how to approach and tackle something.
Do you have a methodology for evaluation? Do you go on Zoom on a weekly basis with your team and somebody says, oh, that's the idea? Or is it just one big sort of mishmash mashup?
That's a little bit of both. My team and I are pretty close. I think we all see and talk to each other a lot more. We have team members in different parts of the world where typically, because of time zones and things like that, we may have not gotten together as much. But I think, I'm not sure if it's every company, but I feel like definitely on our team, we spend a lot more time together in meetings, and we don't have those water cooler or turn to each other at a desk, or as we're traveling together on site conversations. So it's we definitely have set time to definitely tackle projects, but we are also all organically talking a lot more and like chatting constantly. And when we're watching something, we're communicating if it's something live at the same time. So kind of a both, a planned and a little bit of a mishmash.
Is it so as a manager of those people, do you practice every idea is a good idea or radical honesty?
Oh, I personally, I have no ability to do radical honesty, but yeah. So, but that's just my personal.
Is that the way to manage now? Is radical honesty in terms of brainstorming the way to go? Mark, when you deal with your agencies and things like that, how do you know a good idea?
Yeah, so I would say that I'm brutally honest, pre-pandemic to today. I mean, I just think that. Okay. I'd rather give somebody an opinion than, we're not playing T-ball. I mean, not everyone gets a trophy. So you have to figure out how do you, get to what we need to get done. And I hope it's appreciated. At least I don't beat around the bush. I think it's really important to get to the crux of what we need to get done. And there will be good ideas that come out of that. It's not like I'm trying to intimidate people into not thinking and sharing. But at some point, you have to say, that's great. We'll think about for the next time and move on to the next thing. So, and I do that internally and with our external partners.
Catherine, radical honesty or everybody gets a trophy?
Probably radical honesty, but in our brain, when we brainstorm, we definitely create like a nurturing and safe environment. Yeah. I don't think that like brainstorms are the place to give harsh criticism, because you want to create a safe space where everyone feels like, being able to give any idea, no matter how bad or good it is, because sometimes the best ideas actually are born from really not great ideas. So for me, I leave the radical honesty for when we're in production. So for us, like in terms of brainstorming and just making sure that we're flexing that creative muscle. we try to have bi-weekly show and tells across our team where we're bringing things to a presentation that we saw over the last couple weeks that inspired us, especially around experiential or culture. So, last week we had a show and tell, and we were talking about, Bad Bunny's performance on the back of a flatbed through New York City, and like how cool that was. Like, it's so simple in execution, and he's such like amazing artist and artistic director at the same time. So it was just very cool to see like come to life, and just like really digging down on like why that worked. So we try to do that often, and then obviously like take that inspiration that we see from those show and tells and try to apply them to like our own our own events or our own content, and also to our partnerships. And so yeah.
So show and tell seems like a really interesting, companies that do that with your teams, people really feel empowered then, because you're giving them permission to look at the world.
Yeah, absolutely.
Damien. Yeah.
So I think it's not an either or question. I think it's about when you apply those things, right? Yeah. So in a brainstorm, you need guardrails for sure. Otherwise, you just get a mismatch of whatever and nothing's really connected. I think one of the leading questions that I ask in anything, regardless of, what the project is for Instagram, is how does it connect to culture? And that is how you can measure if it is, an idea that has any merit, whether it needs to be built upon, or is it just, almost complete and whole in and of itself? And that's where the radical honesty comes in, and asking everyone to participate in that, in terms of voting up, voting down. Does this fit with where we're trying to go?
Yeah. Great. I want to turn it over to Ashton because we have questions, and she is curating those questions for us.
Yes, so we're going to move into our Q&A portion of this virtual event. And so at this point, if y'all have an answer, feel free to chime in. We can do it popcorn style. And then when there's like that pretty presumable lull, I'll move on to the next question. Okay, so first question, these are all super fun. What is your absolute favorite event idea that you've seen this year? Whether it's from a live event that happened, March before, a hybrid event, or a virtual event, what's been just, you kind of stuck out to you, like, oh, that's really fun, I love that.
I'm happy to go.
Yeah, go ahead.
I think that there's two, what I would say virtual events that stuck out to me. One being the Travis Scott Fortnite live event. I think that, obviously they had been planning that for a while, and I think it just like coincided with a time where people were just really wanting to feel like that they were part of a community and missing live music. So it just was like extremely timely. And I think that they did a really good job of like making it like very inclusive by like, showing it across several different time zones and making each one feel like its own event. So I think, and then obviously in terms of the technology behind that was pretty incredible. The other one that I saw closer towards the beginning of quarantine that's like continued to serve as inspiration for us because it was so simple yet so well executed was the Haagen-Dazs Secret Cinema activation that they did, where it like had all these different like small facets to it, where there was like an affiliate marketing tie-in with Amazon where you could order the Haagen-Dazs ice cream ahead of time. There was like the tie-in with Facebook and the groups to be able to like chat live about the movie. And they really did a beautiful job of like, I don't know what their budget is, but I would assume that it wasn't huge because they didn't tap a ton of celebrities, but it worked. They tapped a lot of like micro creators and influencers that had really like smart and fun and interactive communities that would participate in this, and like really did a good job of like, evangelizing the event and making people want to attend and dress in costume and do that interactivity through all of their creator alignments, own individual communities. And I think that like the proof was in the data, for them as well. I think I read something that like, Haagen-Dazs like pints had increased by like 200% that week. So it was very like timely for Haagen-Dazs to like, align with a group like Secret Cinema and really tap into that creator network and create a fun event around that.
That's right. Who wants to go next?
All right, well, I can move
Kiana?
on to the next question. Okay, so everyone listening right now, I'm sure, wants to pick your brain, hence all these questions flowing in. And I think everyone wants to know, does anyone have any best practices that they can share for event activations during the times we're in right now? Have you seen any new trends that surprised you, digital or live?
I can start. It's a more of a general approach that we use. I just think every time we want to activate and do something, the big question is why and what's the goal? Because I do think that Zoom and screen fatigue is real. So a lot of people, at first I feel like, please anyone feel free to disagree, but I feel like everyone was doing everything and there was just like a lot. And then a couple weeks into COVID, a couple months in, people realized like, oh, people are sitting at their computers 8 hours a day for meetings. And then we're asking them to also be engaged and be excited about something else that's happening on a screen. So every time we get together with a cross-functional team or if we're thinking about how we're going to approach something, we think about like, what is our goal and why, and what are we really trying to get and do less better and be impactful with that. So just trying to make sure that you're not one of a dozen things, but really being the best of the thing you're trying to put out there.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think in terms of the trends that I've seen out, the way people are kind of in the 1.0 way are trying to blend digital and physical events together. When you talk about events and experiential, of course, Zoom fatigue is going to be real because you're only using one sense, right? So in experiential, it's all about hiding all of the senses. And so these tactile boxes that I've seen other folks use, I think, are great, whether it be a tchotchke or something that ties into the event, it could be food and beverage. So people actually feel connected in other senses and that they're engaged. And that's what I would say is really, it seems simple, but it's a critical, crucial part of success.
Yeah.
All great advice.
Anyone else?
Yeah.
Great.
So is anyone here?
One more question, and then
Yeah, sorry, Dave. Is anyone here planning for live events down the road, or is it looking like it's virtual events all the way? Let's take like the first half of 2021. Is anybody planning any events?
So we're hoping to do a live event, actually 3 events with our Walmart store managers. So we're trying to take the 6,000 people and cut it into 2,000s. And we've got 3 cities lined up that have done events of our size. We're still, I'm personally very skeptical. I just think that bringing people together in a city is probably okay. Putting them on buses, probably not. Putting them in elevators is really difficult. So I want to be optimistic because I think, the secret of the sauce for Walmart is getting this group together and getting them excited about something that Kiana mentioned earlier, that notion of being part of something bigger than yourself. So we're keeping our fingers crossed, but I'm skeptical. We hope to do a hybrid version of shareholders, which, we're not going to bring 14,000 people into the University of Arkansas in June, but we are going to figure out a way to at least get some component of the live audience and then push that out to the rest of the world. So actually, the 3 of you, I would love to talk and figure out there's some way we might be able to utilize some of the ideas and some of the platforms you have, because it could be pretty cool.
Yeah.
Am I allowed to solicit business on this call?
Yes, absolutely. Anyone else have any comments on that? Damon?
Yeah, I would say Officially, we have canceled all in-person events that are over 50 people through June of 2021. And we did that earlier on in the pandemic. I would say, I think it's like March or so is when we gave that official guidance. All of that, of course, is driven by where we are in terms of the health situation, and that would be, can people safely attend events? We thought, the number one answer to that would be, vaccine or other therapeutics. And I'm really encouraged by a lot of what I'm seeing recently in the news around vaccines. But we know that even if they get approval in the next few months, there's also the issue of distribution throughout the globe. And so looking at things from a global perspective, probably the second half of 2021 is still kind of the target if everything goes the way that we are hoping it does.
Catherine?
Yeah, I would say the same. I think internally it's twofold. We're like finally starting to get the hang of these like virtual and digital events, and now we're really moving over to what hybrid events look like, and having our production teams be able to shoot safely, small teams in a closed private location with testing and PPE along, and we're certainly working with partners to try to find solutions for, hybrid events as well. I think for us, for any of our Vice Media Group led events, on a physical standpoint, I think, we're same as what Damien said. We're very hopeful with like what we have seen in particular, the last couple of weeks in terms of progress of a vaccine and various therapeutics. And so we're hoping for the second half of next year. We certainly don't want to do anything that's going to put our audience or our staff in compromising positions or places that they don't feel comfortable. So, we're constantly, balancing that. And it's like we just take it month to month. Also, because we are a global organization, those factors come into play. How people are interacting with each other in Berlin or Tokyo or Singapore is very different than, even what's happening here in America. So we really have had to segment things not only down to a regional level in the nation, but also regions across the globe.
Kiana?
No, I think Catherine really covered it well. It's everything is a week by week, case by case, region, location by location analysis, and you almost have to plan for all three scenarios of fully virtual, potentially hybrid, potentially in person. What could that look like? And it's just to give a general statement of X or Y. It just changes often, and it's a really big analysis. And the biggest thing is people's safety and kind of what is the responsible thing to do, and then how to do that well, and what does that look like. So it's really just literally case by case and depending on the date and what we're dealing with and the information we have at hand at the moment.
Yeah, I want to end this, but I want to do something a little different that I normally do this actually, so it's not different for me. But we're here sitting in the Brady Bunch boxes here, and you become a little bit of a family, which is what is supposed to happen at events. So I'd like to do a little bit of a go around to sort of have everybody say, what they learned from the discussion today, and the fact that we're epitomizing what event should be. The idea that we're getting to know each other, we're learning from each other. I've been so stimulated and honored by this conversation that I just want to hear what you guys think. And for our audience to know that when they go to an event, by participating, you get so much more out of it. And that's the one thing that I want to sort of be preaching to the world, is that you got it. When we can't just host events, but people have to be great guests at events, and you guys have been great guests. So I just want to go around the room and see what you got out of today, and see if it was helpful. So who wants to? Catherine, you want to start? We'll start and go around the box.
Yeah, I think it's just great to participate with my peers and other people in the industry on these as a good reminder that we're all in the same position. I think sometimes in leadership can be very lonely, and leadership can be very lonely, especially when your industry is it's very disrupted, So for me during quarantine, I've really tried to extend my my network, meet new people, especially my peers that are in the same situations as me. And it's always a good reminder that like we're all in this together. And I think that this conversation definitely backs that up and just shows the importance of, being able to rely on other people in the industry and having that like open, honest dialogue, because I think it not only inspires creativity, but it definitely inspires and gives you levels of comfort to know that, everyone is in this position and working towards the same thing.
Yeah, I would echo that, honestly, out of this conversation. And whenever I talk to anyone, I mean, this whole year has made all of us a little bit more able to be ourselves. We're in each other's homes. We're like learning about each other's lives. Like, but definitely it's good to know that like we're all in this together. There's not some secret sauce someone else knows about that like you're completely on the outs about. So and kind of figuring it out together. And I kind of from the beginning was really honest with my team. It's like none of us have lived through a pandemic. So anyone who tells you, any vendor who tells you they haven't figured out, like they don't. So, and that's okay. Let's just figure it out together and do some trial and error and go from there. And so I think conversations like this just help reaffirm that, because sometimes, because we're all alone in our own heads and, not out and about, sometimes one could be like, am I missing something? But conversations like this is really great to be like, okay, yeah, we're all kind of tracking, we're sharing information, and we're not on an island completely, even though it feels like it sometimes during this pandemic.
Right.
I would agree with that sentiment 100%. Yeah, I mean, I think that it is encouraging, because there's with three great brands, and to see that they're having the same struggle and trying to work through this crazy time makes me feel better as a leader of the team, and then go back to the team and say, hey, we're not the only ones struggling with this thing. It's real. And some really great, smart people are struggling with it as well. So I really appreciate being part of this.
Right, Damien.
And of course, I think everyone has echoed, the need for community. One other point that I really enjoyed was just, the title of the event and why I wanted to attend and participate in the conversation in terms of pushing boundaries. And while we all feel constrained at this time, it's a good reminder that we still, no matter what our limitations are, we need to keep trying to push that forward.
That's right. Ashton, you want to
thanks,
have a final comment?
Damien, that was like the perfect quote to end this wonderful virtual event that we've hosted. So thank you so much, Damien, Catherine, Kiana, Mark, for such an intriguing conversation. We're so thankful to have you today. A huge thank you to our presenting sponsor, SpotMe. Make sure you take a look around their platform and explore everything they have to offer. And if you're looking for a platform to host your virtual event, SpotMe could be the right match. And as a reminder, this recording will be available to view on demand and will be emailed to you shortly. And again, thank you all for joining us today. To our panelists, you're amazing. Keep kicking butt and taking names, and let me know what events you're up to in 2021.
Right. Thank you.
And I just want to say thank you to everybody. I want to say thank you to one more thing. I want to attribute this to Maya Angelou. We talked about this earlier. Getting that the feeling in a virtual environment is the holy grail. And what I think we did today, between the warmth that we're trying to project today, is part of what this is, that you cannot put any type of metric around warmth. And I do believe that that's the kind of thing that we're trying to do, and we have to figure out how to digitize it. So thank everybody for coming, and I look forward to another time. Thanks.
Awesome. Bye, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks. Great. Thanks, guys. I don't know if you can hear me.